Romney Marsh in Kent is one of those places where the voice of Mother Nature can still be heard. But for the last 70 years, another very distinctive sound has echoed across the wide marshlands. And it's quite unique to this one corner of southern England. It's the sound of miniature mechanical racehorses thundering across the landscape. This is one steam railway whose scale comes as a shock to many visitors.
I think a lot of people tend to think that it's just going to be another railway. And they come in and they find that it's not. It's a lot smaller, but it does exactly the same job as a full-size railway. They can't quite get around the idea that children go to school and go home on it. They can't quite get the idea that we have shareholders and others who actually catch the train to go shopping in Hythe instead of getting on the bus.
The Romney, Hythe and Dymchurch was a child of the 1920s, that age of rich man's Bentleys and biplanes.
It was a millionaire's toy, really. That was the thing about it. Captain Howie, the man with all the money, he inherited 2 part-built locomotives after a friend of his died, had them completed, then asked Henry Greenley, who designed the engines, to find somewhere to run them. Howie's only request was that it should be sort of fairly flat, so that he could run the engines at some speed. They're powerful engines, they go quite nicely, and there are stories of Howie and Seagrave, another great racing driver, racing trains side by side through the marsh. No passengers, of course, well, so we're told.
But nowadays there's no shortage of passengers, or of volunteers to drive the little trains. Like the vicar from Crowborough, who says the cab of a steam engine is a great place to think about the Sunday sermon. Like many enthusiasts, his interest goes back to childhood, to family holidays at the seaside in Kent, when the beach was the last place he wanted to go.
I've always been a great fan of railways anyway, and in my own particular case, as a small boy, my mum and dad used to bring me on holiday to Dymchurch, and I was absolutely besotted with the railway. And I never ever wanted to go on the beach. I was quite happy to stand by the level crossing and watch the trains all day. So this particular railway is obviously very, very special, because I remember standing by that level crossing at Dymchurch on St Mary's Road and saying to my dad, I'm going to be an engine driver one day.
Children still wait at the railway for their first sight of a passing express. Even a little steam engine at speed is unforgettable.
I sometimes refer to it as the longest fairground ride on the south coast. It's a bit like the go-kart effect, you get your backside close to the ground. When you're doing 25 mile an hour, you seem like you're doing 75. It's one of the great eccentricities, really. It's a tiny train that takes people and does exactly the same job as the large one. A lot of them look similar, but because they're painted different colours, they look quite different. And they're all handled differently. But what we have are 462 Pacifics. Numbers 1, which is Green Goddess, 2 Northern Chief, 3 Southern Maid. And then we've got 2 3-cylinder 462s, or they were 3-cylinder, they're now 2 cylinders, which are numbers 7 and 8, Typhoon and Hurricane. We've got a small shunting locomotive called the Bug, which was an 040, built in Germany. We've got 2 mountain class 482s, Hercules and Samson. And then we've got the 2 Canadian Pacific style locomotives, Winston Churchill and Dr. Sim, which were built for winter work. They gave greater protection for the drivers during the winter with the larger cabs, but they now, of course, run all the year round. And we've got one locomotive which we had, one steam locomotive we had from Germany, which we got in the mid-1970s, which was built in 1937. So it's the youngest of our locomotives now, Black Prince. And then we've got the 2 diesels. And you need the diesels because you can't survive in this sort of world without the diesels. They're an economic necessity. It's a quarter scale in terms of the rail width, although the locomotives are actually 1/3 scale. They're definitely not toys. They'll handle a 17 or 18 coach train, which is something in the order of 36 to 40 tonnes with no problem. And if you add their own weight, which is another 8.5 tonnes, they're certainly not toys. It varies from running behind houses to running over lush pasture land to running out onto the vast shingle wastes of Dungeness. And out at Dungeness, the track is on shingle, and shingle moves. So there's a lot of other stuff mixed in with the shingle to stop too much movement. It's surviving, that's the main thing. It's survived now for, over 70 years. So I think Greenlee and the original team obviously had some good ideas.
At the end of the day, the engines are cleaned the same way they always have been. But this is one railway that never closed, even during the war. And like the thoroughbreds they are, each is covered with a blanket for the night. And the Reverend reverses reverently into the engine shed, where evensong is the soft, contented sigh of escaping steam.